Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan of The Chart Guys. I've been trading cannabis stocks for the last 13 years, and in this video, we're going to check in on the charts in the sector after another week of tightening ranges and going to talk about correlations, going to see where we stand in terms of individual names, who's stronger and who's weaker, and going to talk about a potential catalyst on the horizon in terms of a new date for us to be keeping an eye on. So talking about this article first, and this is from CannabisBusinessTimes.com, and shout out to TJ for posting it in the chat room. Essentially, there is a lot of back and forth going on where there is a Freedom of Information Act filed because nobody has actually seen the letter from the HHS to the DEA recommending rescheduling cannabis. And it was Bloomberg that posted the story after apparently somebody saw it. But after the Freedom of Information Act, the letter was posted with a ton of it redacted and with no rescheduling recommendation being seen on it and potentially being part of the redacted parts. But essentially, by December 12th, we'll know if we get to see that letter or not. But just be aware that this is currently going on. You know, maybe it's a headline that comes out in early December to be aware of, but certainly the sector really hopes that we can confirm this because we know how much hype and attention has been centered around this headline and this story. So it would certainly help some bulls sleep better at night if we could get confirmation that, yep, here's the letter and here's where they said it to the DEA. But again, just be aware of December 12th. I personally don't follow this very in-depth. This is as in-depth as I follow it. Essentially, what I do is I scan this and say, okay, when do I need to be paying attention? December 12th. Okay. Leading up to that date, I watch for volume, I watch for news. I'm a little bit more attentive, but that's it. That's how this factors into my decisions in trading. So I've been talking about recently, there's a lot of social media people that are tunnel vision to the cannabis sector, and they have noticed, rightly so, a shift in the price action in the cannabis sector. And that's been over the last 3 weeks. It's just trading a bit differently. And so because they have their blinders on and they're not traders or they're not fully into the market or whatever, they think somebody knows something. People are loading up because somebody knows something. Whereas me as a full-time trader, I know exactly what's going on, and that's not what's happening. Maybe it is. I can't say things I don't know. But I know that the reason that the cannabis sector is showing relative strength recently, vastly different from the relative weakness from the prior couple of months, is because of the broader market. The broader market has done a 180-degree turnaround in sentiment where you had like 6-month lows being hit one day, and now 3 weeks later, we're testing the all-time highs. The NASDAQ right now went from, again, like 6-month lows, 5-month lows, whatever it was, into new 18-month highs. This is an extremely unusual move that's going on right now. It's a short squeeze, and it's not normal price action. And so what you have happening is the entire market sentiment shifting around. The cannabis sector trades most correlated to IWM. IWM is a Russell 2000. It's the most highest risk, highest reward stocks in the market. It's smaller companies that haven't really proven profit yet. And we can see that we bottomed and we were at significant multi-month lows. We went straight down from July, the end of July, straight down drop to the end of October. And we bottomed 27th to 30th. That is our bottom. MSOS, when did we bottom? The 30th. Okay, maybe that's just a coincidence. Then we see some significant moves up. There was a big week of consolidation here, and this is when we full-time traders said, hey, something's going on in terms of we've now got relative strength. MSOS has not seen relative strength compared to the broader market since, the headline reaction, since we topped out there. And so that started standing out to us. But again, look at the price action over the last week of trading. We top out on the 15th. We bottom on the 16th. And now we just have a tightening range forming. And here we have cannabis topping out on the 14th, bottoming out on the 16th, the same day. Again, it's not the exact same days, but these two patterns are extremely similar in what is currently going on. And so the fact that we bottom on the same day pretty much, and we now have this entire similar week of trading going on, for me, this is just correlation. And the market is run by correlations, especially when you don't have high volume. In the absence of significant volume, algos and automated trading systems, definitely less so in this sector, but they run the show. I mean, again, you look at these two sectors, IWM on the left, weekly time frame, all down, and now just 4 weeks of up. All bears from the news top, 4 weeks of up. So watch IWM because we are definitely trading very similarly. So in the last video, I talked about the time frame that had the most clarity to watch all these setups is the 2-week chart. And in the absence of news, we're going to look for tightening equilibriums because equilibriums are the most likely scenario after you have volatility, significant volatility in both directions. So big move up, big pullback. We're scouting a 2-week lower high. Then we're going to scout a 2-week higher low. And then we're going to look for a break of that tightening range probably early next year. Again, news throws this out the window. But in the absence of news, we're talking about most likely scenarios. And so at this point in time, bulls want to see 50% plus bounce retracement. We've only seen about 40% plus. We definitely need another leg up. We also need a weekly uptrend. This move is coming straight off the lows. Eventually, we're going to top out, and we will have to see a weekly higher low and higher high if that bounce is going to continue. Now, to gauge whether who's stronger and who's weaker, we know to divide by MSOS. GTBIF divided by MSOS. Last week, there was rotation out of GTBIF, and there was rotation into CRLBF. And that caught my eye a little bit just because that had, GTBIF has been our clear lead bull for a very long time, and CRLBF has been our clear lead bear out of the major four for a very long time. So it just caught my eye, hey, there's a bit of a shift going on. The strongest is dropping a bit, the weakest is catching up a bit. And, this past week, not really much else going on, no new information overall, but keeping an eye on Trulieve. Because if I look at this chart on Trulieve, I can say that we are testing the strongest that we have been compared to MSOS in the last 4+ months. And so that would be significant if we could get over that level. That would show that Trulieve is gaining some strength as well, relatively speaking. And so we just go to TCNNF and say, okay, where do we stand here? Again, 2-week time frame is a good place to be comparing names because we look very similar, but we can measure some differences. What is the bounce retracement at this point? Okay, it's 50%. So here's an example where TCNNF dropped harder and then it bounced more significantly. And so again, equilibrium is the most likely scenario, scouting a 2-week lower high, but a nice something to keep an eye on, because oftentimes when you see something get to the strongest it's been in a long period of time, that's a good way to identify relative strength. Again, if I'm looking for an individual name that I want to be trading bullish, I want to be trading the name that is gaining strength, not a name that is weakening or staying weak or anything like that. So stick with the 2-week time frame. Again, in the absence of news, it's going to get boring probably a little bit here in the next 6 weeks or so as we continue to tighten up is the most likely scenario. But let's see how high bulls can go before we top out, because obviously the higher, the better in terms of trying to continue to gain some confidence. The Canadian names are not really doing much. We had the pump and dump, and now we're just trading sideways. And the only two levels I care about on CGC are the recent low and the recent high. If we break 47, if we're not breaking 47 or 67, then nothing's really going on at this point on this chart. And it being not in these names personally, and I'll talk a little bit at the end on how I'm trading this sector a little bit more in depth, but not being in the Canadian names right now, I want them to get as weak as possible. Why? Because I want to see as many shorts as confidently in these names as possible, and then a news headline. I mean, the same thing that happened, right? We were as weak as can be, and then the headline led to a short squeeze. And so if I'm not in a position, the weaker that we get, the more bears, the more confident, and then I will play these names. If a notable headline were to drop, I would jump in for the short squeeze momentum just as a trade. So something to keep an eye on, but I'm certainly not interested in these names on a daily basis. TRLY, if we don't break $2, nothing is changing, and the bears are keeping control. And we're looking for a 2-week higher low here as well from where we came from, but a much wider range, and we have not started this bounce yet. And again, we're just clearly weaker. If you go to MSOS divided by TLRY, we could see that, just last week, we were hitting the strongest that we've been compared to TLRY in years. So there is a drastic shift going on, And for fundamental people in the sector, they certainly welcome that after being frustrated for a very long time, while these Canadian names many times would benefit sometimes more than the US names on US news. So the psychedelic sector, MNMD is finding a bit of a bottom, was down at the all-time lows, building a base of support. We had a bull break at 277. There's a little double top there. You can see Friday, very unusual volume for a half day. This is a half day on a holiday, and it's almost the highest daily volume in, it's up there with the highest in a couple of months. So that definitely stands out. 314 is a key level. Again, we got a lot of work to do to put in any kind of meaningful bottom. You go to the monthly time frame, and we're starting from scratch. Anytime you go to the all-time low, and you know what, I take that back. It wasn't the all-time low. CMPS was. We held 212, not by much, but wasn't an all-time low. So now we have a base of support in the $2 range. We know for this chart to significantly shift momentum, we've got to break 501, and that's a long ways away. But there's a clear shift in the short term with the bulls showing up here, and it's going to be all about 314. CMPS had the same thing as far as a tightening range. Again, it was the all-time low, but bull break took place on Friday, and that was 620 and 644 and 658. We got to break 658 here for some follow through. Again, same thing. We're starting from scratch. We have a long way to go. The monthly has been rejecting from EMA 12 resistance for a couple of years. So that's something to be keeping an eye on to see if we can finally get over it. And it's worth watching because, there are examples in the cryptocurrency space where, I guess Bitcoin is not a good example, but examples, here was the weekly example, when you just have it as resistance and it just knocks you down, bears in complete control. And then you finally get over it after 4 or 5 times rejecting from it, and then you start holding it as support, and that marks a significant reversal. So just keeping an eye out for it on the longer term time frames, but a little bit of a short-term sentiment shift. And the psychedelic names trade very similar to the biotech sector, and the biotech sector trades correlated to IWM. So it's all interconnected, but certain things trade more correlated to other things than other things. And so it's worth keeping an eye on the biotech sector. If you are in psychedelics, you want the biotech sector to be bullish. And again, same thing as IWM in the broader market. It has been bouncing over the last month, but a lot of work to do. This is definitely one of the weaker sectors overall, considering where we stand from where we came from. CYBN, volatility is coming here. How can I say that? I've got a crystal ball. Nope, you just look for the tightening ranges, and you know that this range is going to break sometime within the next 3 to 5 days at most, and we'll see a volume and volatility spike when that happens. Key support is 43 cents. Key resistance is 49 cents. Bigger picture, if we break bull, we will be scouting a weekly lower high to be the most likely result of that bounce. We're shaping up a megaphone here. Anytime you see a resistance or a support break with no follow through into a resistance break with no follow through, I call it the piss everybody off pattern because you just stop everybody out. But it's a megaphone to be keeping an eye on. Doesn't really mean much in the short term, but I just use trend lines as a bit of a visual guide to help me get a shape of the pattern, and then I can go into the price action from there. All right, so now how I'm trading the sector. And I know people like real numbers, so I'll give some real numbers on my account here. This is my cannabis only account. Essentially what it is a company account. We were given a tax refund for $18,000 sometime in 2017, and then essentially just said, all right, I'm just going to trade cannabis in this account. When there's hype and euphoria, I focus with it on my day trading account, which is larger capital positions, and that's like my main focus. This account is more like swing trading and paying a lot less attention to it, where it's the kind of thing like, I made a call where I said, I think MSOS bottom is in. So I got to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to have a long-term position that I'm going to try and let ride out from this bottom. So you could see starting in 2017, and a lot of this obviously has to do with the Canadian run, the US run, but up about 400% or so roughly over that time. And here's an image. I just want to show an example of, how the account looks compared to the MSOS run. And when I'm trading here, it is mostly just MSOS. Again, I'm keeping it simple. This is like my secondary attention where, I'll just grab some MSOS and focus on other things. But you can see when the bottom was hit, same kind of run up here. What's the big difference? The big difference is I was taking profit into this move up always keeping some. I'm never going to go back to all cash because, again, if you get the overnight headline and I've got no exposure, I would definitely be kicking myself. But the retracement size is where the big difference is. So I gave back half of that move by holding, core position, whereas MSOS gave back the entirety of that move. And now I'm back up trying to get near all-time highs, or at least highs of the year, I should say. I believe it was a bit higher at peak Canada, but trying to get back to the high of the year. And you can see again, if MSOS were to go up to 750 right now, this account would be at high of the year, whereas we would still be 30% under the recent high. So again, just an example of how just trading a bit partial positions can just sell some euphoria, buy some fear. And I attempted to go long here, stopped out break even, did go long, some under $5. Definitely didn't hold that long enough. It was the kind of thing where sentiment was so poor in the sector. You give me a 7% bounce in one day. I'm locking in a good bit of that profit. And then in hindsight, that was the bottom. But that's the way it goes. So just an example again, I always have at least half this account in the position for longer term mindset. And then with the other half, I'll do the buying and selling. And so like right now, I've got some, I just realized we didn't do technical analysis on MSOS. We'll do that in a second. Right now, I've got maybe 70%, 60 to 70% in MSOS, and the rest is cash. And I will look to deploy that cash next weekly consolidation. Because again, if I know we have to confirm a weekly uptrend eventually to see wherever that happens, we got to confirm a weekly uptrend eventually. So I will be looking to deploy that cash on that weekly consolidation and then have a closer buy stop level to be going off of. So MSOS is in a nice tightening daily range. And again, volatility is coming this coming week to MSOS. We are either going to break 643 support into weekly consolidation and then scout that higher low, or we're going to break bull, getting over 702 and keep this move going. There's a lot of resistance here. Remember this battle on the way down where we were just chopping around under 7 and back over, and bulls were really battling for 7. You get a lot of price action around that area, and then it acts as resistance. So now we are back testing. Let's just draw this resistance or this price action zone where the majority of that price action was taking place. And you can see we pop into it and reject, and now we're balancing out in that level of previous price action. And so bulls would love to turn the low 7s into support again. But that's clearly where the battle's going on right now. And the direction that IWM breaks its tightening range is certainly going to have some implications on what we anticipate MSOS to do. All right. Feel free to ask any questions, and we'll check back in when we get some further developments. Have a good rest of your weekend.